In 1957, Ghana became the first sub-Saharan state to attain independence, with power transferred to Kwame Nkrumah, who is often referred to as the father of African nationalism. But how did we get here in the first place? 2023 marks a significant occasion for about 17 nations as they celebrate 60 to 65 years of independence from the shackles of European colonialism. Sadly, this independence was short-lived for many, as the long-standing efforts of European imperialism in Africa still linger today. The continent, seen as a treasure trove of precious resources by European powers, was systematically plundered and exploited. The dreams of a new era of independence were soon dashed as a new scramble for resources began. The scars of this era of mass exploitation ran deep, with the initial euphoria of independence fading away quickly. It's a story of a continent hungry for another's riches, where resources were just sucked out without any regard for the people who lived there. The 1880s and 90s were a time of terrifying upheaval, whether you lived in bustling cities or remote villages. It's a legacy that continues to impact Africa today. Foreign soldiers, armed with new and advanced weaponry, descended upon Africa as if overnight. This was a phase of their European trading partners that the people of Africa had rarely seen. The sense of entitlement with which these soldiers behaved was appalling, as they justified their actions by dehumanizing the very people they were brutalizing. The resistance from the African people was united, but the efforts were divided, which led to the eventual failure of the armed resistance. In just 20 years, Europe brought 90% of Africa under its occupation. The continent was captured. In many instances, the British did not actually have to go to war to establish their dominance. Instead, they used the threat of military action to enforce their policies, what is known as gunboat diplomacy. This was especially true in situations where they encountered resistance from the local African chiefs or communities. The sight of big, powerful guns was often enough to force these leaders to sign unfair treaties that would benefit the British at the expense of the local population. The impact of European colonialism in Africa was not a result of any happenings in Africa itself, but rather due to massive sea changes occurring in Europe. The Industrial Revolution had taken hold, rapidly transforming the continent into the workshop of the world. This revolution required vast reserves of raw materials, and the African continent, with its wealth and resources, seemed to be the perfect solution. Palm and peanut oil became critical lubricants for the operation of machines, while rubber was needed to make tires to support the emerging demand of modern transportation systems. The burgeoning middle class in Europe also demanded luxuries and goods from overseas in response to exponential growth of modern capitalistic economies and mass international trade that was created. A generation of explorers and traders had already begun to explore the riches of Africa, opening the way for the colonial powers to seize control of the region. Britain and France, in particular, had an almost vice-like grip on Africa, owning most of the continent's major harbors and ports. The African continent boasted a treasure trove of resources, including precious minerals like diamonds and gold, as well as valuable commodities like cocoa, which were in high demand in Europe. With the onset of the industrial era, the value of Africa skyrocketed, making it a prime target for exploitation. The continent not only provided essential raw materials, but also became an essential market for finished products that were being produced on a large scale. However, the scramble for Africa wasn't solely driven by economic opportunities. Colonialism became the preferred path to political supremacy in Europe, with each nation striving to outdo the other.